World War I, often called the Great War, was one of the most significant conflicts in human history. It reshaped nations, destroyed empires, and changed the course of the 20th century. What began as a regional dispute in Europe quickly escalated into a global conflict involving millions of soldiers and civilians. At the beginning of the 20th century, Europe was dominated by several powerful nations. Britain controlled a vast empire stretching across the globe. France remained one of Europe's strongest military powers. Germany had emerged as an industrial giant after its unification in 1871. Russia possessed enormous territory and resources, while Austria-Hungary and the Ottoman Empire still controlled large portions of Europe and the Middle East. Although Europe appeared stable and prosperous, tensions were rising beneath the surface. Nationalism was growing throughout the continent. Countries competed for colonies, economic dominance, and military superiority. Powerful alliances divided Europe into rival camps. Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy formed the Triple Alliance, while Britain, France, and Russia created the Triple Entente. These alliances were intended to maintain peace, but in reality, they made a large-scale war much more likely. The event that triggered the war occurred on June 28, 1914. Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, visited Sarajevo in Bosnia. During the visit, a Serbian nationalist named Gavrilo Princip assassinated the Archduke and his wife. The assassination shocked Europe and set off a chain reaction that would soon lead to war. Austria-Hungary blamed Serbia for the attack and issued a harsh ultimatum. When Serbia failed to accept all the demands, Austria-Hungary declared war. Russia mobilized to support Serbia. Germany declared war on Russia and France. Britain entered the conflict after Germany invaded Belgium. Within weeks, most of Europe's major powers were at war. Many leaders believed the conflict would be short. Soldiers marched to battle expecting to return home by Christmas. Instead, the war would last more than 4 years and become one of the deadliest conflicts ever fought. Germany's military strategy focused on quickly defeating France before turning east to face Russia. German forces advanced through Belgium and moved toward Paris. However, French and British troops stopped the advance during the First Battle of the Marne. The war soon settled into a brutal stalemate. Both sides began digging trenches stretching hundreds of miles across Western Europe. These trenches became the defining symbol of World War I. Soldiers lived in terrible conditions, surrounded by mud, rats, disease, and constant artillery fire. The distance between opposing trenches was often only a few hundred meters. This area became known as no man's land. Life in the trenches was extremely difficult. Soldiers endured freezing winters, heavy rain, and poor sanitation. Many suffered from trench foot, infections, and psychological trauma. The constant threat of death created unimaginable stress. Despite these hardships, millions of soldiers continued fighting for years. World War I introduced new weapons that changed warfare forever. Machine guns could kill hundreds of soldiers within minutes. Heavy artillery caused massive destruction and accounted for most battlefield deaths. Poison gas, including chlorine and mustard gas, added a terrifying new dimension to combat. Tanks were introduced to break through enemy defenses, while airplanes evolved from reconnaissance tools into weapons capable of attacking enemy positions. One of the bloodiest battles of the war was the Battle of Verdun in 1916. The fighting lasted for months, resulting in hundreds of thousands of casualties. Neither side achieved a decisive victory. Another devastating battle occurred on the Somme, where over 1 million soldiers were killed, wounded, or missing. On the first day alone, the British Army suffered nearly 60,000 casualties, making it one of the deadliest days in British military history. While much attention focused on the Western Front, fierce fighting also occurred elsewhere. On the Eastern Front, Germany and Austria-Hungary battled Russian forces across vast territories. The fighting involved millions of soldiers and enormous casualties. In the Middle East, British forces fought against the Ottoman Empire. Battles also occurred in Africa and Asia, demonstrating that World War I was truly a global conflict. As the war continued, economic pressures increased. Countries spent enormous amounts of money on weapons, supplies, and military operations. Food shortages became common. Civilians experienced hardship as governments redirected resources toward the war effort. Entire societies became focused on supporting the conflict. In 1917, a major turning point occurred. The Russian Empire was shaken by revolution. Economic hardship, military defeats, and political instability led to the collapse of the Russian government. The Bolsheviks eventually seized power and negotiated peace with Germany. Russia's withdrawal allowed Germany to concentrate more troops on the Western Front. The same year, the United States entered the war on the side of the Allies. Several factors influenced this decision. German submarine warfare threatened American ships and trade. The sinking of civilian vessels angered the American public. The Zimmermann Telegram, in which Germany attempted to encourage Mexico to attack the United States, further increased tensions. In April 1917, the United States officially declared war on Germany. The arrival of American troops provided fresh manpower and resources to the Allied cause. Germany launched a final series of offensives in 1918, hoping to win before American forces could fully deploy. Initially, these attacks achieved some success, but they ultimately failed. The Allies then launched a powerful counteroffensive known as the 100 Days Offensive. German forces began retreating, supplies were running low, morale was collapsing, and the military situation became hopeless. Germany's allies also started surrendering one after another. On November 11, 1918, an armistice was signed. At 11 o'clock in the morning, the fighting officially stopped. After more than 4 years of warfare, World War I had finally come to an end. The consequences were enormous. More than 16 million people lost their lives, while millions more were wounded or displaced. 4 major empires disappeared: the German Empire, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, the Ottoman Empire, and the Russian Empire. New countries emerged across Europe and the Middle East. In 1919, world leaders met in Paris to negotiate peace. The Treaty of Versailles placed heavy penalties on Germany, including territorial losses, military restrictions, and financial reparations. Many historians believe these harsh terms contributed to future instability and resentment within Germany. Although World War I was called the war to end all wars, it failed to secure lasting peace. The political and economic consequences of the conflict created conditions that would eventually lead to World War II just 2 decades later. Today, World War I remains one of the most important events in modern history. It transformed warfare, altered global politics, and changed the lives of millions. More than a century has passed since the guns fell silent on the battlefields of Europe. The trenches have disappeared, the soldiers are gone, and the empires that once ruled the world exist only in history books. Yet the legacy of World War I remains with us today. It changed borders, transformed nations, and reshaped the course of human history. The lessons learned from those 4 devastating years continue to remind us of the true cost of war and the value of peace. Behind every statistic was a human life, a son, a father, a brother, or a friend whose future was forever altered by the conflict. As we look back on the Great War, we remember not only the battles and political decisions, but also the millions of ordinary people who endured extraordinary hardships. Their stories continue to echo through history, reminding us that the choices made by nations can shape the fate of generations. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this documentary and would like to see more stories from history explained in depth, be sure to subscribe and join us on our next journey into the past. Until next time, history isn't just about what happened, it's about understanding how the past created the world we live in today.